And then this goes back and forth somewhere.
Welcome everybody. My name is Gabriel DaSilva and this is our little place. And we are welcomed Johnes Ruta, who has curated this exhibit, and Scott Olsen, the mastermind behind the book and some of this information right here. When Johnes Ruta told me this last year, about this body of work, he showed me a couple of pieces and said, "You just tell me when, and we're just going to do it." So I don't have as much information as they do, so I will introduce you to Johnes Ruta and then Scott Olsen. And welcome.
Well, hi everybody, thank you for coming. That's really been a study in terms of visionary art and what you can see in the artwork that you're looking at. And if you check out the 3D glasses, you'll see even more. This is a whole study that we've been making on the philosophy of being and vision. So this is where art is connected to philosophy of life. Therefore, I want to introduce Scott Olsen, who is from the College of Central Florida, Ocala. I met him in 1995 in Chesky Krumlov, a little castle town south of Bohemia. And his work is on the golden section and his understanding how that's related to art. So I'd like him to talk about his vision and
well, thank you. Well, Johnes has been a good friend. We roomed together several years ago, and he let me know that he works with galleries, and so we arranged to do this exhibit. I did have a big exhibit at the Appleton Museum last year that I had 95 paintings, and at the same time at the Weber Gallery, this is all in Ocala, Florida, just to give you an idea, 60 there, 30 over top of the world. So you can begin to imagine how many paintings I've collected over the years. It began actually in 2001 when I went down to Peru to go into the rainforest to study with the shamans and to drink the sacred tea. I've been a student of the ancient wisdom, the mystery schools. I'm a national lecturer for the Theosophical Society for the US, but also the UK, and I regularly lecture for the New York Open Center, their Esoteric Quest, and I used to work with Douglas Baker, the occultist, prolific writer, over 100 books, and I was kind of his protege for several years. I'm not saying this to brag, I'm just telling you the background so you understand where this stuff is coming from. So when I would go into the rainforest to study and to have experiences with the plant and animal teachers. Now let me tell you something right off the bat. I've often found it very difficult to convey to my students what it is like to have experiences with plant teachers and animal teachers. Very difficult for us Western left hemispheric thinkers to realize what's actually going on in nature. One of the main things I learned, by the way, I'm going to jump the gun and go right to it, is we think we're so damn smart, and we think that our scientific method is so great, it's very backwards. The animals, I shouldn't start this way. The animals and the plants, they understand completely that we are the despicable aspects of the world, really. We should be the custodians and the stewards, and we don't realize that. When we torture animals to try to get knowledge out of it, they're aware of this. So I go into the rainforest and I go into these non-ordinary states of consciousness, and let me tell you something. They are completely aware of what kind of jerks we are. It's not just our present government. It's humanity. The Western way of thinking has been, it really sucks. That's why when you learn from the shamans, the curanderos, and the ayahuasqueros, that there is a way to work with nature. There's a reciprocal relationship that you create, and they will work with you in response. Now, I am a student. I've been in some of the best universities in the world. I've got degrees up the wazoo. I have learned much more from plants and animals through direct, unmediated perception than any great professor. David Bohm was my professor, Houston Smith, Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut. The plants and the animals have a greater form of perception. In fact, there's a kind of a supernormal perception. We could call it extrasensory perception, but I think it's enhanced perception. And there's synesthesia, and that's what you're seeing in these paintings. So what happened back in 1988 is that, boy, I hope I don't have my cell phone in here too. I probably do. Back in 1988, Pablo Amaringo and Luis Eduardo Luna joined together and they started the Usco Ayar School of Amazonian Painting. And they took all these young children, disadvantaged, gave them brushes, paints, and canvases, and taught them how to paint. Took them out into nature to learn the nature's way and to respect it, taught them music, taught them English language so they could communicate a little bit with other parts of the world, taught them how to behave. It was character training. As a result, after these many years, these young kids have now grown up. You are witnessing examples of their paintings. Now, many of these are the result of deep mystical, non-ordinary states of consciousness. We used to call them hallucinogens. Psychedelics is okay, psychotropics. Hallucinogens is a misnomer. What happens in these non-ordinary states, and by drinking the ayahuasca, or the ancient Greeks who would do it with that kaikian or kukian in the Eleusinian mysteries, it opens a door into the other world, and you see clearly. In fact, those of us who've had out-of-body experiences during these, and I've had many, it's turned out that the things that we see in the world, on the street outside, turn out to be veridical, they're truthful. There's not a bunch of BS. Also, for those who have the misnomer that they think that the ayahuasca is a recreational drug, my God, nobody would want to take it recreationally. It is now used to cure cocaine addiction, heroin addiction, alcoholism. It has nothing to do with joyrides. And you have to, but it's not for everybody. So I'm going to tell you this stuff before I get into the artwork. It's not for all people. You've got to be very careful because you have to face yourself. It's probably the quickest way to die to the ego, other than a near-death experience, going up the tunnel, having a life review, and you see your entire life. That's what you're doing in these experiences. But in the process, you connect with the animals and the plants. So that's where the artwork is coming out now. Now, what Pablo Amaringo did early on as an ayahuasquero, he would do the ayahuasca regularly. So what's the ayahuasca? It's made up of two plants. One is the Banisteria copia, or the ayahuasca vine. Acts as what's called an NAO inhibitor. It neutralizes the enzymes in the gut that normally would prevent the dimethyltryptamine that comes from the Secretaria viridis, or what they call chacruna. It having an effect if you take it through the mouth. Otherwise, you'd have to smoke it. But the thing about the ayahuasca, these two plants together, it's called the vine of the soul, or vine of the dead. It connects you up with your past, with your ancestors, the ancients, and it's very much like a near-death experience. It's a dry run at death. So what people are experiencing, it allows them to transform and change their lives. So it's really kind of cleaning things up is what happens. So Pablo Amaringo early on was doing the tea, drinking regularly, having these experiences, leading people into the rainforest. At a certain point, and there's different accounts of why he stopped, but he stopped. And then all of his paintings are really basically from memory, because he had this very acute memory. We have three paintings actually here that are, I don't have any originals here, They're very difficult to ship and they're very valuable, but we have prints. So this would be an example of one of his prints. And you almost always will find in the foreground, near the bottom, you will see ceremonies going on. That's where they use the ayahuasca tea. You'll also see some of the shamans blowing smoke into the back of the head or the top of the head or into the hands of an individual. Tobacco is actually the most primary spiritual plant that there is. Now, I know that that sounds crazy to us. However, it's a plant teacher, and just like the various pharmaceutical drugs, where we rape the rainforest and the indigenous cultures and take it here and intensify it, and then through the advertising on television, you folks get sucked into all this stuff. It's really intensified it, and it's a misuse, really, of what these people have figured out and what they understand. Now, there are many different plant teachers, not just the ayahuasca. So if you go into the rainforest and you work with the shamans, usually the thing that you'll do is they will figure out what plant teachers are going to work for you most appropriately. And so you'll drink 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 plant substances. They're not psychotropic usually. They're not, well, the correct word probably is entheogenic. If you get a chance, after, I'm not going to talk long, but if you get a chance, either during this month, well, this exhibit is up, or even just going around the corner, there's a couple big charts that we used at the Appleton Museum that actually explain a lot of this old transformative experience, wisdom tradition, and use of entheogens. The word entheogen, en is within, theo, the divine, gen, Genesis, bringing forth. So what the present language after Karl Ruck, Ruck is actually the one who came up with this language, but is now kind of sweeping the planet in terms of the correct language. So during an entheogenic experience, you're bringing the divine that you already have present within you, much like Plato would teach, very Platonic. I'm a Pythagorean and Platonic scholar. That's my main, and philosophy of science, but that's my thing. And this is so Platonic. And of course, Plato got in great trouble in his dialogues by revealing much of the Eleusinian mysteries. So here we're talking about the ayahuasca mysteries, which are very close, wait a second, to what happened in Eleusis. Now, here again, you need to realize that these mysteries were shut down. Madame Blavatsky, the theosophist, pointed out early on that in the initiations in the mystery schools, when they drank the soma, Amanita muscaria mushroom, whatever it might be, or an entheogen like they were using at Eleusis, we have some ideas. And in my research, when I go to Athens, first place I go is to Eleusis. I check out the plants that still exist. I look at the stelas and see the engravings. It looks like they're doing something very similar to what they're doing in Peru, well, throughout South America in the rainforest. So after Pablo decided not to continue to drink the ayahuasca, he painted from memory, opened his school, trained the children, and as I said, these are the products of the children. Now, one of the things that comes up very quickly when you look at the paintings is the various animals. So you'll have owls, you'll have various eagles, hawks, various types of, you'll have pink dolphins. These are all animals, and then the plants, not just datura and the ayahuasca ingredients, but other plants as well that are plant teachers, or many of them. Brahmansia, there's a whole bunch. I won't go through the litany of them. And that's what they're communicating with and going into resonance. Every case, being an ancient wisdom teacher and a student of the mysteries, I can tell you, Blavatsky was right, everything is vibration, everything is resonance. So what happens in these ceremonies and experiences, you begin to experience synesthesia. Synesthesia is where the senses cross over. We now know that this happens to more people than we ever thought. And we kind of block it out a little bit. but you get these very intense experiences where you begin to see sound, particularly in the brow center. So where the yogis and the Easterners talk about the ajna and the brow center, that's a reality. The opening of the third eye is always what I'm after when I go into the rainforest and work with these substances. And you begin to see sound, hear colors, all the senses, you taste them, all 5 senses will cross over. And you can even experience the logos. The logos, John chapter 1 verse 1, I'm not going to lay a trip on you religious, however, in the beginning was the logos. What is logos? Yes, it can mean word, verbum, it's ratio. Ratio, mathematically, logos, before there's ratio, there's the one. But when the one divides, and this is what I learned in the rainforest, I already knew it, to be frank with you, but it gave me the confidence to do the golden section book. So in 2005, not at the beginning of my experiences, I had an incredible epiphany where I actually saw how the golden section, golden ratio, golden mean, divine proportion, all of those words mean the same thing, actually works throughout nature. There's a primordial scission, the golden cut, the whole thing fractalizes, the whole universe is holographic. Every part mirrors the whole. My teacher, David Bohm, once said, the essence of quantum interconnectedness, quantum mechanics, is that the whole universe is enfolded into each and every part, and each part is enfolded back into the whole. That means that you and I and those animals and those plants are the universe in miniature. We're the ones who should be able to figure it out. We're too stupid with our selfish, greedy attitudes and the things we're doing. However, that's what these mysteries and that's what these experiences are all about. So, back to the students and the students pick up on this, and now they're down there and they're selling their paintings. I've collected them, and as I said, I have about 200 of them. So the jaguar, when you see the jaguar in almost every single painting, you may ask, well, why the jaguar? Why the leopard? Why the panther? Why when you go into King Tut's tomb are the priests wearing the leopard pelt? Or the shamans, or why does Dionysus ride on the back of a leopard in the ancient mystery schools? It's universal because of the top of the food chain. And so the consciousness of all of the animals and plants are in these jaguars. And so if you identify with the jaguar, first thing that happens is you begin to realize their take on what it is to be human and what it is to be an animal. Probably the most profound thing that happened to me during these experiences, other than the revelation about the golden section, was that with the cat, I realized that they can smell your heart beating at a distance. So the synesthesia, the non-locality that we find in quantum mechanics. So the catalog is kind of an extension. Several of the articles that I wrote in here are the extension of the golden section, which is now in 9 languages and is an international bestseller that I may have told you. One of the shamans, or not, one of the students took a picture of my eye before I went into the rainforest. So when I came out, they had a painting for me. We've got one like this in the window. It's not this particular one. This one we use at the Appleton Museum. All 28 paintings that we have in here were from the Weber Gallery. So I took about half of what I had at Weber, but there's a whole slew more, and we're going to do more of these things. So I really highly recommend the catalog, because in the back of the catalog, many of the paintings are in there. I'm sorry that I don't have for sale any of these originals. I sold a few of them, and I was so heartbroken after I did that I decided I will never do it again. Where's Gabriel, who keeps pressing me to sell them? But anyway, and I don't blame him. But we make prints, and the prints are on canvas, and so there's basically 2 of everything in here that's available now, and there's 3 of each of the 3 Pablo Amaringos, and there's some extra ones. They're not all out here because some of them are big, like the 3 at the very back here. The one big one on the wall and then the two on the sides, the vertical ones, they were too big to stick in here. And the one in the window out there, which is a stunning one, seen from the outside, they're in the back room if you're interested. They range from $125 to $400 for the really big ones. Most of them are about $200 or $250. So can I answer any questions? Maybe that's everything.
Where can the originals be purchased since you purchased some?
You're going to ask me to shoot myself in my foot right now?
Well, you can't buy them all, can you? I mean,
No, that's true. Contact me and I'll put you in touch. Okay, let's do that. Yeah, because I have my kind of little connection there. And no, I don't need to take anything on. I wouldn't get a cut, but I'll help people if they want to connect up with the originals. Yes, ma'am.
When you identify the logo, can you tell me, as you're reaching that state, the higher states, do you see a distinct divine
Okay, the question is, as you enter into, enter into this higher state of consciousness, do you see like a divine feminine, a divine masculine? Are they linked? Are they separate? Is it more one than the other? You get both, clearly both. In fact, in their viewpoint, there was a Taoist in here earlier, I think this gentleman here maybe. The two plants, one is considered masculine, the other is considered feminine, very much like the Huichols. If you looked at Huichol art, you'll always see like the sun and the moon, and you'll see it's very alchemical. And so both the masculine and the feminine are very, very special. Most people who experience ayahuasca as a being will experience it as Mamacita, Mother Ayahuasca. And I've experienced her very close to me. I put my hand around her. She's very jealous, by the way. If you have these experiences, it's basically forbidden. You go on a dieta. The diet is not just things you cut out, like all salts, all red meats, all starchy products, alcohol, but also sex. You see, the thing about these, it's an odd thing, but it's true. These plant teachers tend to have a kind of liking for humans, and there's a jealousy that actually can occur. And I've experienced that, so you have to be very, I know, someone's kind of looking at me like, well, wait a minute. But back to the male.
Consciousness you're talking about.
Say that again?
It's a mutual consciousness.
Oh yes, definitely a mutual, but you're kind of surrendering to this being who's now, because there's not much that you cannot learn. It's like, it's an oracle. So here's the things you do when you do the experiences. You are either looking for knowledge or wisdom. You're looking for reconnection with a loved one who passed on maybe early and you weren't able to really communicate with them. Or you're looking for healing. Those are the three main things that most people, when they go and have the experience, are doing. Lost my train of thought for a second. Your comment was?
About mutual consciousness between the plant world and
yes.
mammal.
Yes. There's a kind of an odd thing going on. We learned from Native Americans, for example. We view them, we see all the feathers and all of that kind of stuff and a link to nature. And there's a definitely reciprocal, respectful relationship. Those feathers are really the auric field. You know, when you're in these states of consciousness, you do see the auras, you see the energy fields, you see the consciousness, and you can, in a moment's time, just like that, you suddenly can become aware that not only is and I mean everything is alive. Everything. There's nothing actually dead. Nothing. But everything is aware. And suddenly you become conscious of the fact that the trees and all the plants, they're aware and they can communicate. Now, if you're familiar with near-death experiences, which is also another specialty of mine, with the International Association of Near-Death Studies. I do a lot of work with them, studied it for years. You find that they have similar experiences during death. And when I say death, I mean death. So the ayahuasca experience and the near-death experience is a death experience in a sense. You aren't really dying when you drink the tea, but the near-death experience is, the evidence now is you actually are out, you're gone, and then you're revived. And during that time that you're gone, because we are quantum mechanical, it means non-locality is a reality. Your brain is dead, and yet you're conscious out there, fully conscious, and you can be having these transformative experiences. You're back in the body. You know what happens. It happens to those of us who are doing the tea as well. Part of the brain gets switched on. Back to your question, it's the feminine side. We got enough of the masculine left hemisphere going in our society. But the more spiritual side is actually the right non-dominant hemisphere that's like a satellite dish that's hooked up to the universe. That as a philosopher of science, I'll tell you right now, if you know the right question to ask, the universe will speak back to you. And so what happens is, with near-death experiencers and others, like even in a lecture now, let's assume for a second that I have something switched on in here. All you have to do is attend the lecture, watch the video, read the book. You go into resonance and it alters your right temporal lobe, Sylvan fissure. That thing gets switched on. There's lots of research on this now. So parts of the brain that are normally silent, they're now awakened, and you become alert, or you become psychic. Telepathy, clairvoyance, big deal. Precognition, you actually can begin to see the future. So I'm kind of going a little bit afield, but it's all interrelated. This is part of the ancient wisdom. And as I say, this is the rebirth of the ancient mystery school that got shut down. Now we find it in all cultures. We find it in the Odinic mysteries. We find it in Judaism with the mana. The mana, if you really research that, you'll find that you were talking about psychotropics, entheogens, and you having visions of God and all that kind of stuff.
Also, touch on a little bit, in the summary that John presented, you talked about the mestizo tradition. I'm familiar with the whitewater plants of the shamanism. Are there different levels?
Well, there are those, there are perfumos, there are those who work with scents, there's those who work with the plants of different types, there are like different specialties, even the elements. Some will work primarily with water, fire, deity, or elementals, whatever. So it can vary very much from one group to another. Mestizo is your question, though. Mestizo is like a mixed race. Now, what we've found is, even though I've worked with Shipibo Canibo, shamans, who are really the tribes that are affecting the mestizos, like Pablo Amaringo, that's where he learned his stuff. The mestizos are as pure as you can get, even though they're like the mixed race, the present kind of culture. They're not really so tribal, but they have learned and learned very well. They're very good in their teaching and their, what should we say? If you do any of these substances, you really need to be in the presence of somebody who knows what they're doing. As Stanislav Grof and others have said, it's all set and setting. So your mental set, your intention that you go into an experience with, and the setting, the spiritual setting, and the shaman, they prefer to be called curanderos, by the way, not shaman. Curandero because of the emphasis on curing, or curandera for the female. And you really need them to lead you through. So their acaros, their songs, will take you, just like you're in a boat and you ride, because you can have difficult experiences in this type of thing. But back to the painting, I'm kind of going back into the substance, which is related to everything here. Any questions more about, say, the paintings or what you see in them? I will say you'll see the sun in many of them. There's something about the presence of the sun and the moon that's very, very significant.
Do the designs on the paintings have any significance in terms of specific
You know, that's a very good question. He's asking about the designs, and a lot of times you'll see these little, they're kind of geometric floral, and they're very serpentine. Everything in nature, as it grows, it also spins. So that's why phyllotaxis